This is our second Helping Children Succeed discussion, and hopefully everybody has some great thoughts to share. I think a few people are still making their way to join us, but we'll go on and get started. This is Patricia Lovett. I'm usually kind of your consistent voice on PD book discussions as well as webinars. And I hope that you've enjoyed this section of the book as much as I have. I think there was a lot that was really interesting to see how people are doing things in different types of programs, and really to think about how this relates to our work with family learning. Just to get us started, I do have a guest in the studio with me today. So I'll let Amanda tell you a little bit about herself, because you guys may not be familiar with her, and then we'll get started.
Hi, my name's Amanda Evans. I recently joined the National Center for Families Learning back in September. I came from programming in Milwaukee. I used to work for Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy. They are now a Toyota continuing partner. We used to do the Toyota Family Learning programming. I'm super excited to be here with you guys, and I completely agree with Patricia. This section of the book was absolutely fascinating to read through, and I think there's a lot of cool things that this can bring to the programming.
Thanks, Amanda. I did have a couple of intro slides. I know you guys know our mission, but somehow I can't make a PowerPoint without putting that slide in. So this is really what motivates our work and our partnership with you. So I always think it's helpful to kind of remind us of that. And particularly, you should have noticed throughout the reading that there is this kind of recurring theme of the home environment that a lot of times is very much influenced by the income level of the family, and as a result, you know, schedules that they keep and stress levels in the home. So the book that we are reading is Helping Children Succeed by Paul Tough. And I'm very excited to see what you guys all thought about this section, and kind of what your thinking is. I think most of you were on with us the last discussion, but if you weren't, or just as a reminder, most of you know that I'm fairly informal in my approach to professional development and workshops, and book discussions are the same. I do have some questions written down to help us kind of guide the conversation, but really the purpose of this is for you guys to be able to think about, how does this apply to your programming? How do you share this information with families so that they're making good choices and creating behaviors that really support their children to be as successful as possible? And so if you have thoughts that you want to share, absolutely just raise your hands, and I'll unmute you. And that, you know, you can share out. There's certainly no reason for this to be super formal as far as needing to type things or anything like that. But just to kind of get us started, I'll start with a question, and then we can kind of go from there. In reading about the attachment and biobehavioral catch-up model, this was where home visitor Margarita went into the home, and particularly with families that have foster children, she was really working on kind of a steady stream of commentary about the behaviors that she saw as the child and the foster parent were interacting. What did you guys notice about her approach to commenting on their behaviors throughout the visit? Is that an interaction type that could influence your work through programming, or that does influence your work? Is that something you're already doing? If you have a comment that you want to share, if you'll raise your hand, we'd like to hear from you. What is it that you're doing already in that vein? Or was there something that noticed you that maybe you hadn't thought of, that type of approach? Sure, Cindy, I'm going to unmute you. Hi, you're unmuted.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
You're just a little bit soft, Cindy. Is there a way for you to get maybe a little closer to your microphone?
Sure, let me bend down. How's
Oh.
that?
As long as it's not uncomfortable. Now I have this picture of poor Cindy like crouched down over her desk.
It is kind of that way, actually.
Oh.
I really wasn't exactly sure which one is the microphone on my thing, so I just went low.
Okay.
Okay, so really this whole section, this whole part of the book was just, I'm having lots of ahas and just kind of reminders of that in order for us to do our best work with families and to influence them the best that we can, we have to come from the streets-based approach. We have to, we know as experts, I can look at a situation and see 15 things that could have been better, but we've got to find the one or two things that was positive or that, between the interactions and stuff and focus on those, not how we would handle something. And that was just huge. In fact, I read a whole little part to my whole entire staff during staff meeting, and we talked about that a little bit of just remembering that because, we're all experts and we know all the other things that could, but we've really got to focus on what it is they're doing well and how can we enhance that instead of giving them 100 things that they should have done instead.
I think that's a great way to put it, Cindy. And I'm glad you're sharing with other staff members too. That was really our goal in having the book discussion is to kind of help make sure that everybody's really digging into the book and thinking about sharing and how does this influence your program. So what did the rest of the staff members think about that approach and kind of increasing that?
Well, I'll tell you what I really that was an aha thing for me. The part that I shared with them was about when I read the part about the transition to kindergarten and then how it goes up into middle school and high school. And I asked them to think about it not from the children's point of view, but from the parents themselves, as if the parents were the children and then they did not have the supportive environment growing up and how, if they were behind in school and different things like that, just reminding them that with our families that are in stress or, have anxiety or, trying to, they're in survival mode, then their brains cannot take in all the information that we have for them and that we have to remember that and slow down and work at their individual pace and get to know them. Building those relationships are the invaluable pieces first, then we can work on the other things.
I think that's a great point. And I think that's actually something that was in a couple of the questions that I wrote down as I was thinking, is that part about thinking beyond the child or the adolescent, but thinking if you have parents who are in the same situation, they're just at a different stage of life. And so what is the applicability of trying to build these capacities and kind of change behaviors and approaches in adults the same that we do with the children?
Yes, because they this may be their first positive environment where they feel safe enough to be able to use other parts of their brains right now,
Yeah, absolutely. And it does require the kind of safe environment that you guys all work to create so that they can feel okay to do that.
Yes, and one of the things that I was saying, sorry, I'm not really trying to monopolize the time here. I'm just telling you, I was very this has been great. But oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. That we have to be careful with our own attitudes and perspectives towards the parents, particularly because to us, we may get frustrated because we say, man, we've asked them 10 times to, you know, blah, 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 whatever it is that we want them to do or we're asking them to do. But I was just reminding the staff that just because we feel like it's been enough time that they should get that information, again, everybody's on a different path and everyone has different experiences and everyone's brain is in different modes right now. And so we just have to keep our main thing in mind, that we're here to help and not judge and not think they should have gotten it by now, or not think they're unwilling or resistant just because they may not have the capacity yet to get that piece.
Absolutely. I think that's all very important to understand and to bring up, and you know, to constantly revisit as a staff. Does anybody have thoughts related to that? And Cindy, you're not monopolizing. There weren't any hands up yet, so.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, and also, I guess you guys don't have to do this. I can just be the moderator in this regard, but I'll make sure that I mention where everybody's from. So that was Cindy Daniels from Plano Independent School District, which is a Toyota Family Learning partner. Does anybody have thoughts related? Oh, there's Dave. Dave, I'll go on and unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I was actually having this discussion yesterday with Vashti, who's one of our new folks on helping us with NCFL. Was that it's kind of like you go in and you got to realize where folks are and what their environment is, to understand, to not be frustrated about the things that you think they should know and you think they should do. Because what I was explaining to her is that if you live in this, you know, say this circle, this small or square, whatever, you live in this environment that says that this particular thing is right, or this particular behavior is normal, then you step outside of that environment with somebody with an environment where that's not normal or that's not okay. You know, you can be forced back into that bubble that you were in if the people outside of that environment react sort of negatively toward what you think is right. So as an example, I use like, well, you know, we're in class, your phone rings, it's your friend trying to find out what you're gonna be doing later, and you get up to walk out of the classroom to to talk to your friend about what you're gonna do later. And so in your environment, that may make perfect sense that, well, you know, it's my friend and she's important to me and this, you know, whatever. And so you do that. Well, we're thinking that's not what you do, because at this point, that's less important than the information we're trying to give you. And so I guess the way you know, just like the book says to approach it is to not necessarily talk about the fact that, you know, that they necessarily walked out, or that they walked out and that's a bad thing, or to focus on the fact that you appreciate that they did walk out and didn't have a conversation in the room and disrupt the whole class, but then to correct where you can and say, look, you know, if it's not an emergency or it's not important, then this is what I would prefer you to do instead of walking out of the classroom or even having the phone on at all. So it's kind of like understanding where, like you said, understanding where people are, because I think if you for lack of a better word, if you attack the way they do things, like in the example in the book where she just kind of observed and then, you know, saw the way she did some things, because when I saw that, I thought, okay, well, there was maybe one thing that I would have done differently than the parent did, but I thought it was great the way she handled it. But there could have been some things that she should have said, or criticisms that she could have had it made sense that she didn't share. Instead, she talked about how well the young lady handled the situation.
Yeah, I think that's really a lot of it, is kind of celebrating the things that you see they're doing well, and like you said, looking for the right way to bring up if there is something else, and the right time to kind of shift that conversation.
Right.
And I think, I mean, that's something that I see as very similar from you guys know my background is in ESL, and I think it's a very similar thing to students, whatever age, learning to code switch. And frankly, the same, even if it's not ESL, students who grow up in home environments that maybe are not as strong on typical standard American English grammar, for kids to learn the way that you say it in school or in a particular environment, or as adults, the same thing. It's very different to praise when they are using correct constructions, or they're trying out their English. You know, for example, in programming, they're trying out their English during a family service learning project, as opposed to kind of always saying, no, English only, English only. It's that same kind of idea. We're looking for the places to really praise that they are trying it out, and hopefully increase that. So I think that was a really important takeaway for me also, that you really are looking for those opportunities to kind of continuously comment on the positive. Last year I went to a conference where the keynote speaker was from Say Yes Institute, and she focused a lot on, how did she say it? See it, say it, celebrate it, I think. And it really was just this, you know, this idea of stopping and really thinking about what's going on that's good and what can I say that's positive about that, because it does kind of transform your day, and then in turn the people that you're talking to, working with, and programming, and make it a more positive experience.
I also think it might be jumping a little bit ahead. By the way, this is Amanda speaking. That the praise and that motivation that you get becomes more of the intrinsic motivation as you go further along. And again, I think I'm probably jumping a little ahead in our conversation, but I think this idea of that positive reinforcement is something that's kind of an overarching theme over these 5 chapters. And I think that it's a great idea to bring it into the programming and use it with fidelity. And I'm curious how you all bring this into your programming currently, and what ideas you would like to kind of take from this and start implementing in your programming.
And while people are thinking about that, I forgot to mention Dave is from AMPed, which is the Academy of Music Production, Education, and Development. Did I get it, Dave?
That's it.
I've been working really hard. AMPed is a Louisville-based program that's delivering NCFL family learning. So did anyone have thoughts in response to Amanda's question there about how are you using this in family learning programming, or could you? This idea of kind of a steady stream of positive feedback and interaction around practices.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Patricia, say that again.
So what I was wondering is how are we using this positive feedback in the family learning program currently at your sites? And if it's not being implemented, how and what ideas would you bring to the table to start using these kinds of motivations with your students?
And you're referring to the model from the very first, like, chapter 10, right?
Yeah, within chapter 10, and I mean, like I said before, I'm probably jumping a little bit ahead on the gun, but to me, this idea is something that's overarching throughout all of the chapters that we're reviewing. So if you want to draw from other areas in the book, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so I think, you know, what we've done, or what I've done it too, is I've gone into the class and we've talked about kind of what I thought about, you know, how I felt about everybody's ability to, because we're doing technology training as one of our skill building things. So just explaining to them that I was convinced and sure of the fact that they could get the information, even though they may be a little afraid of it, because people, when you talk about technology, they kind of get a little afraid. So, but then not only that, we also try to. I was pretty kind of taken aback by like the part about the incentives and how that had zero effect on the positive outcomes in terms of the schools. But we have, I guess, if you want to call it that, our incentive is that they receive a nationally recognized certification in technology. And I noticed when they because I think when some of them got it initially when we first said it, what the value of it was, and then some I think went home or looked it up or figured it out that it had value. And so the following day, once I had explained that to them, the value of it, like the next day I came in, and all the we had folks in the all, like 15 families. No, we have 17 families. All 17 of the parents, when I walked through the door, like heads down, deep into their study. I mean, it was like that, so when I saw that chapter on the incentives not really working, I'm not sure if that's 100% right, because I feel like sometimes that's what triggers the motivation. And then we've had situations where we've given sort of an incentive, and then that incentive was almost forgotten about because it was like the incentive was to get you in long enough to understand the benefit of what you were getting. And then after that, like after a short period of time, they weren't even concerned about the incentive because they realized the benefit of what they were doing. Like say if you were talking like high school or school age kids, you offer them a benefit because in our program AMPS, like so they get opportunities to perform and they get paid to perform or whatever. Sometimes they get so into learning to play the guitar or learning, whatever it is they learn with the idea that they'll be they'll get to perform or whatever. And then they'll go and perform and they see the results, like the reaction from the audience or whatever, from their performance. And then they forget about the incentive that was initially offered.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there, Dave. That was actually one of the questions I had down was if anything was surprising about that section on incentives, because I think I know you guys have, I would probably argue that the part about their certifications might be closer related to goal attainment. But I think you have a point when they look up how much it's worth, and that that creates a different level to it. I think that's a valid thought there. But even beyond that, I think a lot of you guys as programs have different types of incentive systems that you use kind of to keep people coming back, whether it's raffle drawings that I know I've seen, or kind of almost like attendance charts, or partnerships to provide actual stipends for attendance, different systems that I've seen. And so I was curious what everyone's thoughts were about that, because I know there are ways that everybody kind of incentivizes your program in some way.
Well, one of the things, like you mentioned the stipend and the partnership we have that takes care of that, but even that was kind of interesting because again, they get that stipend, and then it's like they're working even harder once they get in, because I think what it is when the light comes on that says, I really can learn how to repair computers, I really can learn how to build websites. I think when that happens, yeah, that incentive is still nice. They still, of course, want it at some point. But I think it's sort of like they're working, and for like it's almost like they're working like 10 times harder than what that incentive really is. Like they're coming in, it's just it's weird because it's like it's that for that small investment, it seems like do a lot of good. So that's what puzzled me about what he said about those incentives not working, because it just seems that they're working to me, because I know our parents are saying that that's not just that, but the class itself, the sort of the incentive to keep attending is like, it's more than just that stipend after a while. Like the first couple of times when you're trying to figure it out, yeah, that stipend keeps you coming back. But then after the work kicks in and you start accomplishing, like they're actually seeing the websites, they're actually putting their hands on computers and replacing memory and understanding all this stuff that a lot of people don't even get. And then the pride in that is what takes them on. So I don't know if that even really necessarily connects with the incentive part, because I think what he was doing was he was constantly incentivizing everything. So every time they got a good grade, they got, an incentive. Where in our case, it's like that's based on your attendance, and even the rule that if you don't get your exact hours, you don't, like for that week, you don't get it. Like you forfeit the whole thing. Didn't seem to bother them at all.
I think that's a really helpful explanation there, Dave. And really, I mean, I think that's why I was curious what everybody thought about the incentives, because we have had good response back about some programs that have tried different incentives. And I almost wonder if it is, like you said, really kind of the difference in the way it's presented. In a day gone by, when I was a teacher pulling together different sources of income, I sold Pampered Chef on the side. And what you were saying just now reminded me of the way that they phrased, you earn incentives as you're selling things. You sell a certain amount in a month, you get this particular, it might be all of the new free products for the quarter or whatever. And what was really interesting is they were always very clear that you didn't win those things, you earned them.
Right.
And that's kind of the way that you were explaining your incentive there, is that it's something they're working toward and they're really earning. And I think it sounds like you're really setting up that mindset that they're earning it.
And I think that's
makes a difference.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I talked over you.
No, go ahead.
I just said, so maybe that makes a difference, kind of the way that it's presented.
Yeah, I think once it's like, and I said that, and I said that very thing to them. It's like, we're not giving you anything, you're earning that. So you have to do the work, and that's what I said, okay, so we have 17 families now. I think 17 or 18 families now. I said, and look, understand that if you're not doing the work, you can't continue to come, because we need outcomes, and we don't want somebody to come and just sit in the room for that, for that many hours, for that many weeks, because that's pointless, right? So, and I explained to him, if you want to be here, we absolutely want you to be here. But if you don't want to be here, that we understand that maybe you can try at another time, but you have to come in and do the work. And the only way this can work is that you do that. You come in every day and you follow, because we have a set of rules that they have to go by. You follow the rules. We even went so far as to say that everybody should dress as if they're going to work. That we wanted to dress business casual every day when they come to work. And if they had a need for business casual clothing, then Monica would set them up with Dress for Success, and for the young men, the Dress for Success or whatever. So. Another one, conference call.
Thanks for sharing that, Dave. I also had Susan, unfortunately, who's with Louisville Free Public Library and JCPS Adult Education here in Louisville, has lost her voice. So she's typing responses to me in the question box. So Susan shared that monthly attendance raffles have worked for them. She says student winners just light up and the prizes are simple, but they are getting public acknowledgement of being in the program. And I think that's something we've seen at several locations. And like Susan said, simple prizes. I know some programs will staff members kind of hang on to like hygiene items that they get when they're traveling, or just that are nice, like travel size lotions and things like that, even that are very popular and inexpensive. I was at one program doing a site visit last year, and they gave away an adult coloring book, and the groans from the moms that did not win in the room were certainly an indication that that parents are interested in that kind of thing. And it really is a pretty simple setup. So that's another option that I've seen be successful also. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. And it looks like there may be a lull in hands raised. So I'm going to share Susan's previous thoughts about the kind of celebrating what's going on in the program. She says, positive celebrations happen every parent time when we discuss good things happening with families, advancements in class, or sharing something they tried that worked at home. For example, Josephine has finally mastered her numbers, or a student has returned after a family illness, or someone passed a GED ready test. And that little bit of time really is valuable for celebrating those things, and also, you know, celebrating the steps that it takes to get there throughout class time. This is Patricia talking, not what Susan typed, but throughout class time, you know, when you see students doing things that you know are leading to that kind of success, that's also important to celebrate. So I'm so glad you made it to class on time today. That's really important because that gives you more time to study for that GED ready test. Or, you know, we know that this parent came back after a family illness, but we also know that this other parent reached out to remind them and to tell them, you know, that we missed them and we hope they come back. Celebrating those kinds of things along the way are also helpful. So Susan also included that during staff meetings or emails, they also share those celebrations of what the students are up to kind of remind the staff and help them see that they're getting through, and to reinforce that that their safe and positive environments are really helping. And I think that that's a really good point, Susan. That actually really kind of makes me think of when the book talked about the bidirectional model of self-regulation. This was the part where there was kind of coaching and feedback to teachers that was intended to create kind of a positive feedback loop for students. And they said, you know, what was interesting is that this coaching and feedback only focused on environment and on kind of interactions. There was nothing content-based, but the students actually had increases in content knowledge. And I actually was going to ask how you guys work to create that kind of feedback loop. And I think what Susan shared here about kind of reminding staff through whatever kind of contact you have, hey, this is going on, and it's because of the great thing you're doing, that does help to kind of interrupt the times where we might get frustrated because that student didn't come to class on time, or missed 3 weeks in a row and then came back and was lost and confused. And having that opportunity to kind of be reminded of the positive ourselves makes a big difference in our ability to deliver programming as well. Does anyone else have ideas they want to share about how you do that in your program to kind of work on the staff positive feedback loop?
So this is Amanda speaking. I can just talk about my own experiences from when I was at the school I used to work at. What we used to conclude every meeting with, and we had them on a monthly basis, was the last 15 minutes was always a shout out of celebrations. What's going well in the classrooms, what's going well with the family engagement, what's going well in everyone's lives in general. So we always took at least 15 minutes to just solely focus on the yay, this is amazing, we are so happy we are alive, and life is good moments.
Most of you guys have not gotten to work with Amanda, but that's not surprising at all to hear from her. So she's definitely a celebrate the good things that are going on in life person. But that is important, because especially if you're in a program where you don't have opportunities to engage as frequently with each other, and you're more of kind of ships passing in the night as staff members, it's very easy for that disconnect to happen, where you may not realize the full impact that you're having. And that is important. It is important to have that kind of feedback into what you're doing as well. Does anyone else have thoughts they want to share on that? And I'm especially curious because I know some of you are more in a director, coordinator, kind of top level leadership role. If you've just joined us and you have anything you want to share, if you just raise your hand, then I'll unmute you. Okay, it looks like no one else has thoughts on that, and that's fine. I think I also wanted to double check about one of the topics that I noticed a couple of times in the text, because I'm not sure that for those who are not coming from an early childhood background, I thought this might be a phrase that's not as straightforward. The book talked about serve and return interactions a few times, but it didn't really exactly define it, I felt like. And so I was going to ask if anybody would like to maybe share their understanding of that type of interaction and how you work with families to engage in serve and return. Do note in looking through the list that a couple of you guys are definitely from early childhood backgrounds. But it looks like one may still be connecting audio. So I'll just volunteer it. But if anybody wants to jump in, you just raise your hand. The idea of serve and return conversations is that sometimes children will share a very small amount, or maybe a word or a couple of word phrase. And the idea of serve and return is it's essentially like playing tennis. There's a serve, and either the ball just keeps bouncing and it disappears, or there's a return and it kind of becomes this volleying back and forth. And so the idea is that when that child makes an utterance, you want the parent to engage back. And so this creates a conversation, as opposed to a child just saying something that kind of disappears. And I'm sure we've all seen that happen. And you see really great examples also of parents who do engage in this way. I think there's been a recent uptick in people specifically focusing on grocery store conversations, I feel like, because I feel like that's the place. I don't know about you guys, but if I am out somewhere and I hear really great serve and return conversations and kind of digging into the things that we see around us and building vocabulary, the grocery store is like the #1 place that I hear that happening. And I think that's specific modeling that people are doing in programs with parents, which is great. But the idea is that no matter where they are, parents can and really should be engaging with their children in this way. It helps to develop their vocabulary. It helps to develop their their understanding of how conversations work, as well as featuring into their kind of their bond with their parent and attachment as well. That's the basic idea of serve and return. I'd like to hear from you guys, though, how you actually work with parents, or maybe if you weren't sure what that is before, how could you work with parents to make sure that that is a part of their interactions with their child? And in what part of your programming would you see that being appropriate? I feel like this is the part of the afternoon where if you were all in front of me, I would say, okay, let's all stand up and touch our toes for just a second. But Cindy just saved us all from doing virtual toe touches. Cindy, yes, please share with us about serve and return in your program.
Well, I just automatically thought about how we just naturally do that. I just naturally do that when I see a child of any age anyway. So just the intentional modeling for the parents. We have learning lunch where the families all eat together in the big room, but our staff is in there as well, because that is time for us to model conversations and to model how to interact with the children and everything, and with the parents as well. It's just kind of conversations, but just always being on the lookout that they're watching us and listening to us. And if we just do what we know to do, there's going to be some learning opportunities within that anyway.
Great. Yeah, it's a lot of it is modeling, and I think that's really the part that I wanted to get from you guys, is that a lot of times we do think, well, that's how you interact with a child. You know, you talk, they talk, you both get opportunities, and you really kind of make that intentional. You ask questions so that they will share more. And the funny thing is that a lot of times, I know and I would imagine probably this happens for you guys too, when I tell people about my job and they, you know, if they're actually interested in more than the 2 sentences that are kind of top level, and I actually talk about things like helping parents understand about, I usually wouldn't go as far as serve and return, but about how to have conversations that are, you know, good for their child's development and things like that. A lot of times people will say, well, isn't that's what people do when they're talking to a child? Or you talk about, you know, helping parents understand how to read with their children. That's how I read to a child. And it seems common sense a lot of times to people, but it's the same as when Dave was talking earlier about really kind of soft skills and even things like, you know, that parent leaving class to talk about what we're doing this weekend on the phone. It's not necessarily common sense. And so that's part of why parent time, and then also having packed time on site where facilitators are able to engage and help provide feedback, is really beneficial, because you get an opportunity to see how those parents and children are engaging, and to give some feedback that's really that really has an opportunity to feed into what their practice is with their child. Cindy, I don't know if I put your hand down or not, or if you put it back up. Did you have something else to share?
No, sorry.
Okay, no, it was probably me. I think Dave does then.
Well, I just want to, I was just thinking about something said, and hopefully this applies, but I was thinking about when you talk about serve and return, and it being something that everybody did, just makes sense that you say something, your child says something, you say something back and forth like that. But when you look at particular cultures, like, that's not necessarily the way it's done. So like when I see some of my parents engaging with their kids, the kid wants to say something, and then the parent says something, and that's the end of it. I mean, I don't know if you ever experienced that, where like a parent says, okay, this is it, that's it. Like, no, there's no more discussion. And so I'm not sure if that's what you guys are talking about in terms of serve and return, like that opportunity to have that back and forth conversation with the child, even if it's something that you want, like say, if you want if you want the child to say stop doing a particular thing or behave a particular way, there's still a conversation that should go back and forth until everybody understands what's going on. So, but sometimes what I see is a parent, a child will say, hey, I want to do this, or I would like to do this, or I need to do this, or whatever. And the parents like, just be quiet. You know what I mean? It's that kind of that thing. I'm not sure if that fits or not.
Dave, I apologize. You guys may not have seen it happen, but GoToWebinar totally kicked me off just now, and luckily Emily Sedgwick was on, and it put her in charge for just a second. So I missed about 45 seconds of what you said just now.
Oh no, I was just saying I was trying to make sure that what I was saying was like where, like, for example, I was taught as a kid when my mother tells me something, she's not expecting a response back. Or if I say something and she says something, that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. That's absolutely it.
So to think that it's a natural thing, or everybody should understand that there should be a conversation back, because honestly, like there was a time when I thought, you know, parents having a conversation back and forth with their kids didn't make sense to me. It's like you told that child what to do, and that should be the end of it. But that's not necessarily helpful, because then that child's left not really understanding what's going on.
Right. And that's exactly why I wanted to bring that up and make sure that everybody was clear on what that section's talking about, because you're exactly right. It is not the system that every parent comes from. And if that's not what you experienced as a child, then you don't necessarily know, you know, aside from the bond with your child, you don't necessarily know how important that is to your child's brain development to actually engage in those conversations instead of having kind of unidirectional communication.
Right.
Thanks. And Susan actually also from Louisville Free Public Library added a couple of things. She said Okolona Elementary just had a speaker about brain development of children and how important serve and return will be. She stated that in most homes, parents speak 80% of the time. Parents must find the time to allow the student to talk. More dialogue than just did you or do your homework type of questions. And that's exactly right. Changing up the types of questions. That's why when you guys look at lesson plans that we create to help support programming, that's why we focus on open-ended questions in several different opportunities, because that in and of itself is a skill, being able to think of more than just yes or no questions to ask the child, because that still directs most of the time to being the parent. Susan also says that the speaker indicated that children require time to answer as well. So she reiterated the same way you would think for other classes, that you want to allow wait time. She suggested 8 seconds before the child answers. And then she also provided sample questions with them for them to try with their children. Things like open-ended questions. So thank you for sharing that, Susan. And actually, Susan, do you mind to type in where your guest speaker came from? I know a couple of the other programs from Louisville are on and might be interested in that. That is a very important topic to share with parents, and even honestly, even beyond early brain development, in thinking about children at older ages. It's still important for them to have those serve and return opportunities because that's their opportunity to be heard. And a lot of times that's what teenagers will tell you that they're looking for is, I just need somebody to listen. And so the same would still hold true. But for younger children, if you're a program that's focusing on early childhood age children especially, it's actually very important for them to be able to gain vocabulary, skill and practice, and understand how we create language back and forth. So that's absolutely an important part of modeling in parent time, as well as encouraging those interactions in pack time, so that you can help guide that. Dave, did you have something else to share? Or is your hand still up from before? I think maybe it was from before. Diana? Diana, I see your hand is up, but it looks like your audio is not actually connected. I'm going to, I clicked the button that should have sent you the audio pin just now, Diana. You should see that and be able to access it. If not, if you call Emily Sedgwick, she can help you get connected, I think. Yes, Dave.
Oh no, I thought you were speaking to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, I did before that. Your hand was still showing as being raised, and I was making sure if I needed to put it down or if you had something else to share.
No, I'm sorry. You can put it down.
Okay, good. I haven't had the hands issue in a while. I think all of you guys are actually newer partners than poor Carla, who was at Houston Public Libraries. Her hand would just raise on its own in GoToWebinar, and it was just her, but I would call on her all the time, and she was very sweet about it and would just come up with something to share because I had already called on her. For those who are in Louisville and might be interested in the speaker that Susan mentioned about brain development, she says it was Dr. Kathleen Cooter, a family engagement specialist at Bellarmine University. So if you're interested, as a parent time speaker, that would certainly be a great opportunity. And now that you type her name in, I've heard of her and actually heard very, very good things. So other programs, if you're in the Louisville area and interested, I would certainly say that's probably a good person to consider reaching out to. Diana, I see that you are connected now, so I'm going to unmute you. You should be able to speak now. Diana?
Hello?
There you are.
There we go. Hi there. It's actually
Hi.
Ashley Clauso. I'm the coordinator on the team. How is everyone? Good.
How are you?
I'm well. Sorry that took a little figuring out, but I wanted to offer to David something that might prove helpful. I know it's something that a resource we've readily used in our programming, which is the Room application, in terms of a prompt that can kind of inform parents on the scientific backing of how these sorts of interactions aid in development. So I know we've encountered something similar what David was speaking to, but we found that when we encourage parents to download this app and receive the daily prompt by text to sort of, these very everyday activities that they're doing, whether it be at the grocery store or folding their laundry, a way to interact with their child that doesn't require much extra, but a way to amplify these everyday interactions so that they're much more powerful and they helping their child's development, has been really empowering for parents as well. And so that's something we encourage them to use, and it seemed to work because it gives them a daily activity, but also explains how this is helping in their child's development. I think when they are able to make that connection, it's more incentivizing for them to engage with their child in a new way.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And you said this is Ashley, right?
Yes.
So, Ashley, you guys had a grant to implement Vroom, is that right?
That's right. Mhm.
Do you know, as far as the details on purchasing the app for any programs that we're thinking about maybe doing that? Do you know any of the details on that?
I don't currently, but I can follow up with you from that after the call to certainly get you that information.
Sure, that'd be great. And it is. Sorry, I know that you told us just a little bit about the app, but it's been a little bit since I spoke with you guys about it. Does it do that as kind of a push notification daily? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they can sign up so they're receiving daily prompts via text, and you can sign up either in English or in Spanish. And so they receive little badges as they complete the different activities. So they can either receive this prompt or go in and select a particular activity, be it bath time or bedtime, meal preparation, different sorts of daily activities where they can say, oh, I'm doing this, and so let me see what I can do to make this a more powerful or interaction with my child.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
And actually, as you said that, it was funny when you're talking about kind of the different times of day, the different opportunities for interaction. Some of you guys are Toyota grantees, so you're familiar with the Family Time Machine. But for those who are not, Family Time Machine, which is familytimemachine.com, I believe, is a resource that NCFL provides that families can actually sign up for an account and share their own activities. And they're broken down. As you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, that is, and actually Amanda mouthed it as well. That's kind of similar to Family Time Machine as far as kind of breaking things down into buckets of time throughout the day. And there are some activities on there that are seeded by NCFL as well. So if anybody has questions about that, thinks they might be interested and hasn't checked it out, I'm happy to walk you through it sometime. But thanks, Ashley, for sharing about Vroom. I know that is a popular app. It's kind of similar to Ready Rosie, I think, also.
Yeah, very similar.
Thanks.
No problem.
So I don't see any other hands. So I feel like it's okay to move on. I also was curious, and we kind of talked about the incentives discussion already, but following that, the book kind of took us to this understanding of needs and what needs people have to really to be able to learn and to function. And it named 3 specific needs: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And I'm curious, looking at all 3 of those or any one, how do you work with the families in your program to make sure that those needs are fulfilled? Looking at the needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Okay, I guess kind of deeper into that thought, are there ways that you're specifically fostering that that competence, autonomy, and relatedness through family service learning in your programs? Okay, Susan, I exceeded the 8-second wait time on serve and return. So I'll engage a little bit because I do have the benefit of seeing what programs are doing across the country. And for one, if that question did kind of throw you, I invite you to consider registering for next Friday's webinar, going deeper with family service learning, which actually Amanda is going to join me to host as well. We'll have 3 representatives from 3 different Toyota Family Learning programs that really have done a great job with kind of particular aspects of this in their family service learning components and projects. So I think that will be a valuable opportunity if you are still kind of struggling with how to do that through family service learning. And a lot of times the biggest thing to me is that kind of autonomy when it comes to family service learning. That is an exceptional opportunity that you as program staff have really to kind of get out of the way. Family service learning has great power to help participants see, some of them for the first time, that they really can bring an entire project to fruition, that they really can do something that that makes a difference in their community when they didn't even know where to look for a possibility before. And so one example that I would share that I've seen happen with autonomy there is at one program, the facilitator is very strong about encouraging families to use the technology that they have available, use the resources they have available to them, and look for the answers themselves. And that sometimes is a difficult thing to do from an education standpoint, because you might even know the answer and you feel like you should have the answers. But the empowering part and the part that kind of creates that autonomy is that the learners get the opportunity to find the answers and to construct the reality of the project that they want to bring to bear. And that's really something that's not always available, especially to participants who are, as a couple of you guys have talked about today, those participants who are really living in kind of in the moment situations, kind of constantly in crisis management. That kind of supported autonomy to really figure out the project themselves. That's pretty huge. Part of that also, though, I would say addresses the competence area. When you're talking about actually saying, that's a really good question. Where do we go to find information about, about where we can put a bench? Find it. That is actually helping to develop the competence of that participant, because you're there and you can support them, but they're taking the lead and they're doing it. They are putting their hands on the information themselves, and that creates that competence that then builds in the future. So that's just one example that I've seen of really kind of putting the emphasis on the participants actually engaging the resources and information themselves. Amanda, do you have any that you would want to share? Any ways that you specifically, because Amanda just came to us from a program site, so she's been facilitating family service learning until this year. Any specific ways that you work to address any of those needs with participants?
I think you actually touched on the big one, is putting the autonomy in students' hands and letting go as the facilitator. The very first project that we did, I will fully admit I was a little too hands-on with that one, but it was a great learning experience both for me and for the students, because we all made mistakes together along the way, and it made it a lot more comfortable to have that autonomy and to be able to go out and do things on our own, and to put the trust in each other that it's okay to go out and do things. You don't need me, the facilitator, there holding your hand. you can walk the path. When it comes to relatedness, some of the projects really kind of shined a light on the community and the actual issues facing the community for our participants. There were things that people just did not realize was happening within the local neighborhood, and it shocked them when they were actually doing the research point. So bringing it around and relating it to not only just the community, but things that they could personally do, whether it was going out and leading a little bit of a campaign. For example, they did voter registration within our area. They realized there was a massive amount of people that were not ready for that. And so we had our families go out and set that up, and it was kind of exciting. And the same thing with the competence, again, learning about the different resources that are available and understanding how to use and find those resources, making connections to local libraries, making connections to their local politicians, and not being afraid to show up at those community meetings and talking and letting their voice be heard.
Great. I think those are great examples. And actually, this is a spoiler alert for next Friday's webinar, but I was talking with Rob today, who's one of the guests, and he said one of the things he's going to share is actually how, even from a curriculum standpoint, he's fostering right now with their participants the investigation process through teaching specific phrasing about, you know, how to express affinity for things, how to express discomfort, so that participants, because their participants are largely ESL learners, so that participants have the language to express what it is that they are they're seeing and they're experiencing in their community. That's helping to build their competence with regard to the family service learning projects. And that's really when we talk about infusing family service learning throughout programming, that's really what we're talking about, is that participants are capable and competent for the process as they go through it. And so different groups of participants need different supports to make that happen. So it's not just completely stepping out of the way, but it's making sure that they have what they need to be successful in that moment. A lot of times with the competence in that way, that can also be related to kind of micro instruction, very short lessons that may be focused on, you know, if participants say, okay, the next step is that we need to write a letter to the city council so that we can request permission to, you know, the permit to have a street cleanup. Okay, that's great. So maybe a micro lesson about the structure of a letter would be helpful to set that up so that everyone is on the same page and they do have the competence that actually guides them to do that next step of the process that they've identified. So those are some ways that kind of we've pinpointed. I would still love to hear from some of you guys what your thoughts are on how you're doing this and how you're connecting it to make sure that your family's needs are met. Because a lot of times these kinds of things are, when we look at retention in your programs, a lot of times these are the kind of things that influence participants coming back and feeling like it's the place for them. Dave?
Yeah, so yeah, we do. I mean, I feel like we do a lot of that. It's like, you know, just checking with them in terms of that. We actually just recently had, we got a lot of students from New Directions Housing Corporation. And so we actually had their chief operating officer come by to check, kind of sit in with the class, just kind of check things out. But just finding out from them, like, you know, issues that they have maybe with where they're living, or some situation, something that's going on with that, you know, situations that they have with maybe with their benefits or anything, that we just kind of not letting them understand that it's not just, we're not just looking at, we're doing this class and stuff for you, this program for you, but we want to help you beyond that. So, you know, if they, like, one of the things we talked about when we talked about our community service learning project was, like, what are some of the things that you would change in your neighborhood? And so from that, we ended up getting into a lot of things that they were dealing with personally in their neighborhoods. And so just kind of helping them understand, like one lady was saying, you know, the gun violence in our neighborhood, is something I would love to be able to take care of. And I said, well, how do you think you can do that? She talked about a block watch. She said, but the problem with the block watch is that usually people that start block watches get intimidated. Like they get, you know, basically said, you know, by the people doing the wrong in the neighborhood are like, yeah, don't do that. And so I said, well, so what's a higher level thing that maybe you can do? Maybe in terms of, you know, legislation related to gun control or whatever, something above that place where you are. And like, you know, writing to your congressman, speaking to your councilman, or, you know, going to community meetings where, you know, the police department are there to share with them, and, you know what I mean, just those kind of things. So just really just treating them as family, not just a person going through a program.
Great, thanks, Dave. I think that absolutely connects, and that kind of family nurturing is a lot of times what creates the relatedness and the connectedness for participants to feel like it's a program for them and to want to be a part of it. Does anybody else have thoughts to share there? I don't see any other hands. So we're very close to the end of our time. So I wanted to give everybody the opportunity, if there are other takeaways, other thoughts that you had from this section of the book that you'd like to share, this would be the time. Okay, Cindy, I see your hand.
Kind of along that same thing about the autonomy and the competence and relatedness. One of the things that we've kind of been toying around with for the last couple of months, just kind of creatively thinking about how can we give our adult students more choices, more options, more, you know, autonomy to what is it that they're interested in, what do they want to learn about, what do they want practice with. And so we have one of our days during the program week where we call it specials, but we, you know, it's just a kind of a rotating schedule or whatever. So we've kind of just initially started some brainstorming of can we offer different, you know, kind of fine arts, different things where the families, where the parents can be creative and kind of have some responsibility for their own learning and choose what types of things that they're interested in, you know, whether it be we have a photography class for 6 weeks or a whatever class, but we have several different options, and then they're able to choose what their interest is because we talked about how that would increase engagement so much just because they have a choice of what it is that they want to learn. So we're kind of playing with that. I'm curious to see if anybody else has anything like that already in place.
I think that sounds like a great idea. We'll see if anybody else has thoughts to share about that. But I think while we're waiting to see if anyone else types or raises a hand, I think that would be maybe somewhat connected to what I have seen as an approach. Basically, you know, we always talk about following the goals that the families have and kind of looking for the top cross sections for parent time topics and opportunities for parents. That I think kind of fits in with what you're talking about. But I have seen programs, because very often health literacy, being in better physical condition, those are kind of top goals a lot of times for parents coming into the program. And so I have seen a couple where I know like at Deary, which is in Providence, they actually had University of Rhode Island come in. They have a nutrition workshop series. So when you said having like 6 weeks of one topic, that was what made me think of it. For parent time, I think it was a 6-week series. They had this presenter from University of Rhode Island come in, and she did parent time based around nutrition and making healthy choices for your family. And so each week had a different focus. Each week also featured a recipe that the parents made together in parent time that was easy to recreate at home. They focused a lot on, they were using like canned vegetables and things like that. So they focused on things like making sure you rinse the vegetables and everything to get as much sodium out as possible, and trying to make it accessible ingredients that the parents can have on hand more easily, but make it in the healthiest way possible for their family. And that partnership came out of those parents having a goal to increase the health level of their families. The same with having kind of financial literacy focus, that that might be even using resources like Day at Dollar General from NCFL. That's structured as a series of workshops that you could do every week for, I think that one's 6 weeks, or you could do the first week of the month or something like that. I have seen that work well. Susan is sharing also, for a future parent time, I looked up the FIND program from chapter 10 at developingchild.harvard.edu. Yay! Look at you using the book. And it contains expanded information to share with families. A bonus, some of the materials and videos are in Spanish, Arabic, and a few other languages. So that's great to know. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. So I think that hopefully, Cindy, that at least a little bit addresses, I don't see any other hands going up, but hopefully that at least a little bit addresses your thoughts there about autonomy. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and your whole example about the nutrition stuff, that is actually one of our family service learning projects over at Sigler that we're really excited about. The students over there partnered with the school nurse, and they are actually being trained from the North Texas Food Bank on nutrition classes, and then they're going to turn around and train and do the same training and stuff for the different moms groups in Sigler Elementary. So that's very exciting. We're excited about that.
That is exciting. We'd love to know how that turns out as you move forward.
Sure.
So I think I would say a lot of times that autonomy does kind of feed in with really focusing on individual goals. And that's something, if you didn't know, or just it never happened or whatever, if you're interested in getting a link basically that you can use to access the results of when your families do the initial interview coming into the program, and they're asked about their goals, and as well as any of the other information, I can create a report link that you can use. It doesn't really break the results down by participant, but to get an aggregate of what your participants identify as goals, as well as things like the library card question, the different kinds of community events questions, to get an aggregate and be able to see, oh, okay, 10% of our participants have a library card, or only 50% of our participants have gone somewhere other than school or church in the community. I can run a report link and send that to you so that you can see that for your group. And sometimes that does help to find kind of that cross section that's where you're meeting the most parents' goals that they come into the program identifying through that interview, as well as, like I said, some of the other things that are sometimes helpful targets to know about for field trips and things like that. If you've got families where the parents are saying, we don't ever go do this kind of activity, maybe you ask if that's something they would be interested in given the means, and sometimes those are nice ways to kind of create the group opportunities. Are there any other closing thoughts about this section? If not, we very much appreciate you guys joining us on this Friday afternoon. I know that it does get late, and we really appreciate you reading the book along with us and tuning in for the discussion. The next discussion will finish out the book, and that is April 6th, again, 2 o'clock to 3:30. And we really appreciate those of you who have contributed to the discussion today. Amanda says that maybe I should send some gold stars out to like Dave and Cindy and Susan there. So you never know, that might happen. But you guys don't know this a whole lot, but in the office I give out stars stickers a lot. It's very hard not being in a classroom sometimes. But the next discussion will finish out the book, and hopefully, again, have some really great information. I know that it does. I've already read the rest, but hopefully the information will be very helpful for your programs as well. And I encourage you, as you're reflecting on what we've talked about today, as well as digging into the next sections, as always, I encourage you to think about how you're sharing this information with your staff and your students. When we talk about information and people say information is power, that's absolutely right. And that is really exceptional power to be able to pass on to your participants in your programs. So as you're, as you're practicing serve and return interactions with parents, consider having someone come and speak, or kind of doing a little of the background yourself and sharing with them, why is this so important? Sometimes parents really are moved by things like what Susan was sharing, parents speaking 80% of the time. Well, is that what we expect, or is that something that maybe we should do differently, and why? That is very important to be able to share as part of parent time. So I encourage you to think about that and to share with your colleagues. Also, be ready, because we'll be sharing this slide a lot with you guys this year. Our conference is coming up in September, and I know you guys are all with partner organizations, so you don't necessarily have to worry about registering yet. You'll receive information about that very soon from your various coordinators. But I do want to make sure everyone is aware, and if you will be representing your organization, that you're planning ahead. September 24th through the 26th, we will be in Fort Lauderdale. It's a great location. We're very excited about that. And we really hope that you are not only planning to be with us, but also that you're thinking about what concurrent session you would like to propose and getting those in by the deadline, which I think is March 1st. Participants always love to hear great things that are going on in programs that they can put into practice right away. So if you're considering presenting and submitting a proposal, then I encourage you to move beyond considering and just do that. So if you have questions, not sure what to present about, absolutely reach out to your technical assistance coach, and they would be happy to think that through with you. And you can also reach out to me. This is my contact information, and I'm always happy to talk through possibilities. But other than that, we thank you guys so much for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again here in April to finish out the book, and bring some colleagues along next time. Thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.